For a period of time, it looked like clean, old-fashioned hate was dying when it came to a rivalry game. Georgia has dominated the rivalry since Georgia Tech left the SEC, and it looked like this rivalry was going to die. But then, last year's game would be an instant classic, and this year, both teams are fighting for a spot in the college football playoffs. Could clean, old-fashioned hate really be back? But before we get into this, if you enjoy college football content like this, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Also, let me know which rivalry game you are most excited about in the comment section below. Clean, old-fashioned hate is one of the best rivalry games in all of college football, especially when you look at the history behind the rivalry. While Georgia has dominated the rivalry for the most part, Georgia Tech has shocked the college football world a handful of times and could once again do it this coming week with a possible college football playoff bid on the line. This rivalry is over 100 years old and could start to get competitive again with Brent Key at the helm of Tech and Kirby Smart at Georgia. The rivalry dates all the way back to 1893, making it one of the most played rivalry games in all of college football. The University of Georgia was the first ever state-chartered school in the United States, being established in 1775. 100 years later, in 1885, Georgia Tech would be established. Georgia felt that Tech should be located in Athens, but instead it would be created in northern Atlanta. The conflict between the two schools traces back all the way to 1891, when both schools considered their school colors to be old gold. Georgia Tech would be old gold and white, while Georgia was considered to do old gold, black, and crimson. That would change as Georgia's first head coach felt the color yellow symbolized cowardness and the old gold color was too closely related to the yellow, so the color was dropped after the first game in 1893, a game Tech would win 28-6. Also in 1891, Auburn would bring Georgia Tech fans to their game against Georgia to help Auburn beat Georgia. This was before Tech ever had a football team. During that first game, Tech fans claimed that they were hassled and heckled by Georgia fans all game long, and it bothered them so much the school's fight song, The Rambling Wreck for Georgia Tech, was written and included the line "To hell with Georgia." Georgia's alumni website writes, Georgia fans showed their dissatisfaction by chasing the Tech team back to the train station with rocks, knives, and whatever they could get their hands on. The next day, an Athens journalist accused Georgia Tech in the Atlanta Journal of liberally mixing in professionals with their students on the team. According to Georgia Tech's website, one theory behind the name is that it started following the game when Tech's football team headed back to Atlanta on a train that collided with a freight train. None of the passengers were seriously injured in the collision, but some consider this the reason for the Rambling Wrecks from Georgia Tech. Both teams claimed lack of sportsmanship from the first game, and a rivalry was born. While Tech would win the first matchup, Georgia would win 5 of the next 6, with the 1902 game ending in a 0-0 tie. Tech would proceed to go on a 5-game win streak, and would win 7 of the 12 matchups before it was put on pause in 1917 due to World War I, although the 1908 game would actually be cancelled. During the break, Georgia mocked Tech for fielding a football team during World War I, when not a lot of schools did because of the war. At the time, Tech was being used as a military training grounds. The rivalry was not played from 1917 to 1924, as Tech was angry as during a Georgia parade, they saw a Model T and a tank go on its route. The tank read 1917 Georgia and France 1918. The Model T meanwhile read Tech in Atlanta 1917 to 1918. Another story was that the students held a parade to celebrate, and a pair of floats created a scandal. One was shaped like a tank with a banner that read UGA in Argonne, and the other was a donkey dressed in yellow with a banner that read Tech in Atlanta. None of the school's sports would compete against each other during that period because tensions were so high. Finally, after 9 years, the rivalry returned in 1925, where Tech won 3-0. In 1932, Georgia and Georgia Tech were both charter members of the SEC Conference, a conference Georgia Tech would stay in until 1964. Tech would go 16-13-3 with both schools in the SEC. Led by head coach Bobby Dodd, Tech would put together the longest win streak in the series, winning 8 straight from 1949 and 1956. Then Georgia Tech would choose to leave the SEC after a dispute between Bobby Dodd and Alabama head coach Bear Bryant over the use of scholarships and treatment of student athletes. 11 years later, Tech tried to return to the SEC and needed to be voted back in. The vote would fail, keeping Georgia Tech from returning to the conference it was a charter member of, as legend has it that Georgia was the one that got the no votes together to block the Yellow Jackets from returning. When Tech left the SEC, Georgia really began to dominate the rivalry. From 1965 to 1975, the Bulldogs went 8-3. Since 1975, Georgia is 38-11. Bobby Dodd's feud with Bear Bryant really cost Georgia Tech in the long run. Before their feud, Georgia Tech was 27-27-5 from 1893 to 1964. The success at Georgia also coincided with the Bulldogs hiring Vince Dooley as head coach. Dooley would go 19-6 against Tech during his career. In 1977, the term clean old-fashioned hate was coined by Bill Cromartie, who published a book under the name. While Georgia dominated the rivalry since Bobby Dodd retired in 1966, Tech would win a national title in 1990, a decade after Dooley led Georgia to a national title in 1980. The 1999 game would be a legendary game won by Tech 51-48. Tech had won a controversial game in 1998 in Sanford Stadium, was led by quarterback Joe Hamilton. All hell would break loose at the end of the game, and instead of kicking a potential game-winning field goal with the score tied 41, Georgia tried to win the game on a run play where they would fumble. Depending on which side you ask, you will get a different answer on whether it was truly a fumble or not, depending on which side of the rivalry you're on. The game would go into overtime. Georgia would block Georgia Tech's game-winning field goal attempt, but because Georgia O'Leary chose to kick on third down, and since Tech recovered the ball, they got to kick again and would win the game 51-48. After the game, the officiating crew was suspended by the SEC. It was one of the greatest games in the series' history. Georgia Tech fans thought they were returning to their glory days in the rivalry after winning 3 straight from 1998 to 2000, but when Mark Richt arrived at Georgia, the rivalry swung right back to the Bulldogs' dominance, who went 13-2 in 15 games against the Yellow Jackets. In Kirby Smart's first year as head coach at Georgia, they fell to Tech 28-27 in Athens in 2016. That would also be the last time Tech beat Georgia. The rivalry got ugly for a few years and some felt it was dying. Georgia Bulldogs on SI even wrote about the rivalry being dead back in 2022, where Georgia won 45-0. But then it became more competitive after Brent Key was named Georgia Tech's head coach. He made this a more competitive game. Georgia won 31-23 in 2023, and last year we witnessed one of the best games in the history of the series, as Tech pushed Georgia to the brink as the Bulldogs would win 44-42 in 8 overtimes. I think last year's game really reignited the rivalry, and now both teams could be fighting for a college football playoff spot when they play this Friday. Kirby Smart and Georgia also have the chance to tie Bobby Dodd's record of 8 straight wins. Both schools call each other out in different fight songs. In Georgia Tech's Up with the White and Gold, Georgia is mentioned inversely through the lyrics, Down with the Red and Black, as well as the aforementioned Rambling Wreck, while Georgia adds To Hell with Georgia Tech in Glory Glory, an in-game song but its secondary fight song. It does not mention Georgia Tech in an official capacity. As of 2011, according to the Bleacher Report, Georgia Tech has replicas of Bulldogs in the urinals. Former Georgia defensive tackle Jeff Owens said, "People don't know this, but Georgia Tech has a replica of a Bulldog in the urinals." Georgia O'Leary would never let players wear red on campus, and if he saw them in red, he would ban them from campus, according to the former Tech quarterback AJ Suggs. Suggs said, "When I played for Georgia O'Leary, he would not let us wear red any time of the year. If you had the color red on, he would call one of his equipment guys, bring you out a white or gold shirt, make you take the red shirt off, and he would take it away from you. You would never get it back." There's even a dispute between the schools on whether the games during World War II should count. The two consider each other their two biggest rivals. Well, I know some people are going to comment that Florida is the bigger rival, but from my experience with family members and friends who went to Georgia and who are fans of Georgia, they may claim Georgia Tech is their little brother, but in reality, they want to see Tech lose more than anybody, no matter the rivalry record. Households and families are divided, and this game really means something to both sides, whether the Bulldog fans want to admit it or not. After Georgia Tech was so bad for so long, the game lost its luster, but with both schools being competitive again, it is now a game I circle on my calendar and make sure I am home to watch or near a TV while it's on. What do you think? What is your favorite college football rivalry? Let me know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out one of my other videos YouTube thinks you will love right here. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, remember to embrace the grind.